I'm Jon Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. Make sure you're following us on YouTube or Spotify. You can always find all the information on Facebook and, of course, at brewermag.com, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff that you can find your business resources with us. Well, every once in a while, I like to be able to go through the audio archives and find some interviews that I've done in the past. This one is taking us back into that dark time, late 2020, early 21. It was our March-April edition of the Brewer Magazine, and it was in Houston, Texas that I had to connect. A great opportunity to connect with Brock Wagner, the founder of Houston's St. Arnold Brewery, and the great opportunity to talk. Unfortunately, it wasn't in person, it was Zoom. It was actually, I think, one of the first Zoom interviews we had did, and I wish I would have recorded the actual video, but I did record the audio for you. Went through and picked out a few pieces that are still pretty key today, so there are a little dated references here and there, just because this is a little over 4 years old, but I think there was some great insights that Brock had about the start of St. Arnold, going into where they were at that point in time, and especially talking about adding food to your brewery. Check it out. Because you did come from investment banking prior to that after graduating from college. So how much of that background really helped keep you afloat in the beginning? And, what were some of those key moments and key things that you thought about at the beginning that, kept you guys going as you were building?
To this day, I can still build a financial model in my sleep. I like to tell people that there's only one reason that companies go bankrupt or close, and that is they run out of money. Now, the reasons that they run out of money differ, but if you can plan well and have the ability to do financial modeling, you can sort of see what different choices, what different paths will lead to. You can figure out ahead of time if a certain path is going to cause you to run out of money, and you can avoid that pitfall. So, I think having a finance background is helpful. It's critical for anybody in business to understand the financial side of it. And it's not sexy and it's not fun and it's not what I like to do, but it certainly helped. I remember before I opened the brewery, I'd done my business plan and had gone around and visited. At the time there were about 100 shipping microbreweries in the country, and I visited about 25 of them. And one of the things back then, it was amazing how friendly and how helpful everybody was. Mm-hmm. And people didn't have their small operations. People didn't have a lot of extra time, yet these brewers would all sit down with me and, take time out of their busy days and share their knowledge and wisdom. And that was invaluable. I probably should say I called 25 breweries and 24 of them agreed to meet with me. The 25th went out of business.
Was
karma.
Oh, okay. Who of those 24 really impacted you that you recall?
I would say a lot of them did. Paul Shipman, Red Hook was independent at that point. Paul Shipman, his comment when I showed him my financial model, he said two things. First was, "Wow, I wish I had these." And the second was, he said, he can turn a businessman into a brewer. He can't turn a brewer into a businessman. And I think that's a gross oversimplification, because I would also argue that to be successful in craft brewing, it has to be a passion. And I think that's the one thing that I see that's a difference from 1994 to today, is everybody who was getting into craft brewing when I was opening St. Arnold, I feel like it was a passion. Today, I still see some people who it's a passion, but I also see in the last decade, I've seen a lot of people that have opened breweries because they think it's a business they can make money at. And they like beer, but it isn't necessarily the passion. And I think that shows in some of the businesses.
Sure.
Yeah, Full Sail was super helpful. Jamie Emerson was there then. John Harris may have been there, but I didn't talk to him at the time, though I got to know him well since. He has his own brewery now.
Eclipse.
There was a guy at Sierra Nevada, Bob August, who he was a big resource for me, especially on packaging stuff. He's long since not been there anymore. I sat down with one of the Widmer brothers, and to this day, I've looked back at my notes to try to figure out which one it was, and I'm not sure. But the funny part is they would help me a lot on the brewing operations and sourcing equipment and raw materials and other things. At that time on the West Coast, when I would ask them about how they sold their beer and how they marketed their beer, they'd sort of look at me confused. They'd be, well, like the truck backs up to the dock, we fill it up with beer, it drives off, it shows up a couple of days later, the distributor needs more beer. And that was a big difference. On the West Coast, craft beer was selling itself. There was way more demand than there was supply. In Texas, we had a completely different issue. There was no demand, and that was kind of the big challenge here.
Just going back to when you were talking to Sierra Nevada about packaging, what were the things that you learned from them in that? What do you mean by that?
Well, there was technical stuff on trying to reduce air. I mean, we did we bought an old soda pop filler from 1952 that we refurbished and had a bank of World Tandem labelers. So, I mean, we had, this old equipment. I mean, that's what you did back then. I mean, we couldn't afford a new bottling line designed for beer. It talked about filtration and clarity. He said that I think they did one batch that they didn't filter at all, and they discovered that their customers didn't like hazy beer, so they needed to clarify it. I remember because I probably first bought Sierra Nevada in maybe 1985, because that would probably be about right. That was the year I started home brewing. And I remember the first bottles of Sierra Nevada. I mean, there was a pile of yeast on the bottom of those bottles. And over the years, they still bottle condition, but now it's like a dusting that you have to really look hard to find.
Yeah. Talk about that, having the brewing background as well. Were you from the start brewing? Have you, or did you bring someone in with you? Kind of what was the part of that business plan, and how did you go from that to having someone brewing for you?
So I was self-taught. I started home brewing in college. In fact, it was the RA in my dorm who taught me to home brew. So technically, I am using what I learned at Rice, and it's not what my parents thought that I went to college for. When I decided to open the brewery, I wanted to brew. I mean, I had a business partner when I opened the brewery. He was actually the person who hired me out of college for my first job in investment banking. So when I decided I wanted to open the brewery, I talked him into joining me, and he did the sales, distribution, marketing side, and I did all the brewing production side. As a home brewer, I read everything I could get my hands on. George Fix was my real mentor when I was opening the brewery to kind of get up to a professional level of brewing. But, you do learn when you open a brewery that what you knew as a home brewer is a fraction of what you need to know as a professional brewer. So the learning curve was steep, but I loved it. To me, it was just a great challenge. And in the early days, I'd get into the brewery at 5:30 in the morning and brew all day, try to wrap it up by 6:30, go home, shower, eat dinner, and go out and do a promotion at a bar. Mm-hmm. I could do that when I was 29. At 56, that would be a little more challenging.
Yeah. So how long did you brew then before you started bringing in crew and someone to kind of brew with you?
I've never been a believer in sort of assistant brewers. Like today, our brew crew, like we have brewers, mm-hmm. and brewers, they brew, they filter, they clean the tanks. We don't have cellarmen or anything like that, because one of the things I always say is I feel like cleaning the tank is every bit as critical as brewing and filtering. So why would you have somebody who you didn't feel comfortable with brewing cleaning your tank? So everybody does everything, and so it's a relatively horizontal team, which is still something I really try to promote also. Nice. Although clearly we have more structure today than we did 26 years ago. But I guess it was probably about 3 years in that I had somebody else who was really helping with the brewing. And then at 5 years in, I bought out my partner and most of the other investors that we had. And at that point, I kind of was wearing all the hats. And so since then, I have not been the person turning the valves, although I could operate everything. At some point, like if you put me on the line today and I had to run our brew house, like when we installed the new brew house, I learned how to run it, and that was 10 years ago. And I would hate to think what would happen if I tried to operate the system today. I still know technically how to do it, but in practice, it wouldn't be pretty.
Yeah, that's where your SOPs come in. You could just sit there and try to work on that.
The other thing is, you keep hiring better and better people, and I have an amazing team that I work with, and frankly, I think they do a better job than I ever did at brewing the beer. And I still work hard to really impart that, the importance of quality. I mean, all the beer recipes, we have a pretty exhaustive process for developing a recipe, and I'm a huge part of that process. And even at the end, I mean, we still dump batches of beer when we scale something up and it's not 100% there. Good enough isn't. Nothing leaves the brewery unless we are passionate and excited about it.
Talk a little bit about the brands. What did you build your brewery on, and are they still part of that core, or have you seen things change over time, and what the brand's beer's main stuff is?
So the first beer that we came out with was it was amber ale. That was the first recipe I developed, and that is still around today. And that was our flagship in the early years. Then in 2001, came out with Fancy Lawnmower beer. And Lawnmower was sort of our big beer for kind of the next 15 years. And it's still going strong today. We came out with our American IPA, Art Car, in, I have to go back and look, 2015 or 2016. And that's been a monster. And I will put that beer up against any IPA. It's drinkable, balanced, exciting, hits all the notes, doesn't have any of the off flavors that to me a lot of the big heavy hopped IPAs have. And then the other brand that we've had throughout, I introduced Christmas Ale in 1995. So we'd been open for about a year and a half. And that was our first seasonal beer. And we have 5 seasonal beers. And they're a single SKU. So if you go to the grocery store, you'll see St. Arnold Seasonal on the tag. Mm-hmm. Those continue to be, that was our largest brand, St. Arnold Seasonal, for many, many years until Art Car supplanted it recently. And we've had no change in our seasonal lineup in all these years, except for one slot, our winter slot, the one that comes right after a Christmas sale, which for about a couple decades was winter stout, but that one has changed up a couple times since. Now it's Texas Winter IPA, but the rest of our seasonal line is unchanged for 25 years.
When it comes to a portfolio size, how big is your portfolio on average with seasonals and core?
I think 13 beers. It sort of bounces around.
Yeah.
I should probably know this off the top of my head. Maybe it's even 15. We have, sort of the core brands, Art Car Lawnmower, the seasonal. Those are our biggest ones. And then we kind of always have, it's very important to be introducing new beers constantly these days. And, that innovation is a lot of fun, and our team has really embraced it. But we probably have 2 to 3 beers that we're coming out with every year that are year-round beers. And, and then on the back end, you have there's kind of this brand cycle that a lot of these beers fall into. Mm-hmm. Periodically you'll have the art car that, catches hold and takes off. But more often now we're seeing, sort of a 2 to 5 year lifespan of a lot of these brands. And, when we discontinue a brand, our customers there's always some vocal group that tells us, why did you kill that brand? It's like, we didn't discontinue it, you did. It's just driven by what sells, and once a brand falls below a certain level, the grocery stores are going to take it out of their sets, and so we need to have the next brand ready to come in. And there is some fun that comes along with that too. Yeah. So I would say that we have sort of probably the top 5 brands that are pretty consistent and do well, and then you have kind of the bottom 5 that you're kind of watching to see what's happening there, and then you have a few in the middle that are maybe niche beers that are never going to sell a lot, but they also, for us, our lower performing brands outsell top performing brands for a lot of other breweries in our markets. We tend to have a pretty good presence in the grocery stores.
Craft beer doesn't advertise traditionally. You guys have to kind of build your own base. How has that been some key parts, and what have you guys done to build your base through all the different markets when you're not doing traditional marketing?
Salespeople, social media, our email, newsletter, PR outreach, Instagram. We really try to reach out to people in the market and involve the markets. Try to promote accounts, that are supporting us and that kind of thing. There's no magic silver bullet. It's just execution and legwork and a lot of hard work by our team.
Yeah. And good beer, obviously, because like you said, you started with this saying that the quality mattered. And how has the quality gotten even better? I'm sure you can attest to the fact that from the time you started to where you guys are, how much better it is. You even said that, the brew team that you have now is phenomenal. And, how do you guys continue to get better at that?
Oh, we are constantly learning it. Quality is a never-ending race. We are always trying to figure out how to make the beer better, tweaking a recipe, looking, reviewing everything from our mashing program to looking at the packaging and how do we reduce dissolved oxygen, quality of our raw materials. We're constantly focused on the quality. And I think, one of the other things that quality ties into, and also it ties into marketing, is we have a lot of fun. We opened our beer garden, and that has given us a real ability to do some kind of smaller batch releases and put different beers out there. Some of them we just do at the beer garden. Some are more market-wide releases. And I think the special release beers have a huge marketing potential, and really generate excitement out there from customers. At the same time, we only put out a special release beer if we think it is amazing. So that I think people have gotten used to knowing that, hey, there's some new release coming from St. Arnold, and I know it's going to be good, as opposed to there are a lot of special release beers that we see coming from other breweries, and it's a little bit of a crapshoot. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes you'll have them and say, how did this ever get out of the brewery?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of those dangerous things for our entire industry. And people know if they pick up one of our beers that they won't be disappointed. And, there's different styles, and there are certain things that appeal to certain beer drinkers more than others. So there's always that element of it. But from just is it a high quality product coming off of our line, people always knows that quality will be there. And I think that helps kind of separate us and gives us an advantage in the market.
Oh, one thing you were talking about earlier when you were talking about kind of how the brewing structure works, how's the management structure for you guys now? How have you built that up? And, I think I always kind of mention, usually good business owners understand their weaknesses and find people to take that over for them. So,
that's definitely true.
Yeah. What were your weaknesses? Who did you bring in, and how has that helped you guys succeed?
Sales.
Yeah.
I am like the world's worst salesman. I know nothing about sales. It's not a strength. I don't particularly enjoy it. So we've always had good salespeople because I knew that I wasn't good at it. But we brought in a sales manager a few years ago who I think has really helped our team a lot. He came from some background of beer sales experience and has been able to really teach the team and help them. So that's been, a positive. We attempt to have as horizontal of a team as we possibly can. As the company has gotten larger, it was one thing when we had 11 people at the company, I had 10 direct reports. Today we have, pre-COVID, we had over 200 people, but on the brewery side, we have about 80 people. And obviously having 79 direct reports would be a cluster. But we really try, as the company grows, to hire people who can handle the complexity of the company, as opposed to creating more structure and limiting people's roles. But I would say that today, I don't have to come into work and everything runs perfectly well. In fact, a lot of the team would probably prefer that I just stay home and just let them run the show. We have a team of people, a lot of them have been in place about 10 years, that really help make me look good. Basically I take credit for all the hard work and leadership of the rest of the team. But a company is nothing but people. So the better people you hire, the better your company is going to be. And I love, that's probably the thing that I am most proud of with St. Arnold is the people that I work with.
How about, and you said you started without the brew pub model. You guys now have the beer garden, the kitchen. Was that something that was when you guys moved to downtown Houston, or was that now just a few years ago when you added the beer garden? When did the food become part of this?
So this is something I've always wanted to do, but it was illegal for us. Mm-hmm. We opened our kitchen in 2013, at which point we were technically selling the food, but the beer was still free. Then we got the law changed so that we were able to sell beer for on-premise consumption only. And once we got that done, then I started working on my idea of building really a big beer garden next door. And that was a process. I had to buy the property next door. I had to buy the street from the city between our properties because it had to be one contiguous piece of property for our license to work. And that was really a culmination of a dream to really build a destination beer garden and restaurant. That was kind of the last box I really wanted to check as running and leading St. Arnold. That opened in the summer of 2018. It has exceeded my wildest dreams have been exceeded with that beer garden. And that's been a huge amount of fun. Having said that, I'll also say that while I've kind of checked every box that I have, the rest of my team hasn't checked every box that they have. And now I view it as my goal to help all of them achieve all their dreams, and I still love what I do. So
cool.
We keep marching forward.
But yeah, appreciate you taking the time for us. Too bad it couldn't be face to face, but maybe sometime. Maybe I'll come on down and say hi as well when we're
Yeah, well,
down
please
there.
do. Yeah.